Good morning, everyone. The morning after Celtic's fairly routine win over Jablonec to reach the playoff stage for the Europa League. 3-0 in the end, 7-2 on aggregate. A bit of a doing, really, for the Czechs, let's be honest. And I think from the moment David Turnbull scored the first last night, Tony Haggerty and Alison McConnell, things probably never felt in doubt. And in front of a full Parkhead, it went just about as smoothly as you could have hoped, Tony.
Yeah, I think Celtic controlled it from start to finish, as you say. Myself and Alison had spoken earlier in the morning, saying they had that comfort of the 4-2 away win, so there was a kind of relaxed atmosphere about it all heading in, and Celtic played some decent stuff, and Turnbull scored 2 cracking goals, and and even Hart at a couple of points in the game produced 2 good saves when he had to, which is a rarity at Celtic Park these days. Alison will confirm that. But there was a feel good atmosphere about it all. As you say, 7-2 in aggregate. It was a bit of a doing, but it was just nice to see Celtic control both legs and and not exert themselves too much, as you would say.
Alison, you were there. Was it a bit of a novelty having a full stadium again, or did it feel like it had never been away?
Yeah, a mixture of both. Actually, it's amazing in these circumstances how quickly it feels normal again. I think, it was the kind of atmosphere that I think we had predicted. I think people were just desperate to get back in and see their team and get back in, and even just the renewed friendships that you see through football and through stadium seats. But yeah, I think what was notable for me about the performance and just about the optimism around the club at the minute was it just brought a bit of joy back to Celtic Park, and it's been a while, I think, since you've had that. I think people are buying into what Ange Postecoglou wants to do. I think the players have certainly bought into it, but you can see that reflected by the way that they're playing, the kind of football that they're trying to play, and the fans have bought into it. And one point of note from last night was that when the players took a walk around the perimeter of the stadium at the end of the game, that the manager took it in too, just took his time. There was a slight bit of reticence, I thought, on his part at first, and then he came onto the pitch and he got a fairly warm welcome. And I think it just summed up that everyone has bought into his philosophy, that there's support there for what he wishes to do. I think they're a long way away from the finished article. I think they've still got a distance to go, particularly defensively, but from middle to front, I think they look like an exciting team to watch at the minute.
Fair point, I think you raised there, Alison. Tony, important to allow excitement and a bit of positivity, but also context that it was only a couple of weeks ago that Midtjylland knocked Celtic out of the Champions League and Hearts won the opening league game of the season. So it's 3 wins in a row and things are looking better for Celtic. But there's Dundee and 2 games against Jablonec. Now it's Hearts again this weekend, albeit in the League Cup. Then I think it's St Mirren in the league. Is that right? Before the derby against Rangers. So I think there's probably a more serious acid tests to come for this squad. But the signs are good.
After the Hearts game, after the Midtjylland and the Hearts game, it's been a trajectory like that. I think people allowed themselves to get carried away in the back of the Dundee performance and the way the team played. The margin of victory could have been a lot more than 6. And that it just gave them a feel-good factor back, as Alison said, and brought some joy back. They're not going to win 6-0 every week, but I think Celtic supporters were just delighted to see the fruits of Ange's labour looking as if it's working straight away. I think they were interested to see what his style would be and how they would go about it. And as Alison's also said, from middle to front they're looking good, but the defence still needs sorted. They gave up a few cheap chances to Jablonec last night, and the fact that they were so far ahead rendered them, it would have rendered them meaningless. But had they scored, then we'd like to have seen Celtic's reaction to that. But Joe Hart was brought in to save the ball, basically, and be the goalkeeper that everyone thought Celtic needed. So, and he did his job. So that's another plus point as well. But you say, context, you take into consideration the opposition. But it's hard for fans not to get carried away when they think their team's playing football that puts a smile on their face. And big word, joy. I think the joy's been brought back to Celtic in the past 3 games, but as you say, bigger tests to come, and if they can win their next 3 games, then I think they will start to get really excited. But you only focus on the next one, and that's Hearts. And I think there's a real chance for immediate revenge against Hearts, and I think that'll be on a lot of the supporters' minds, certainly. Maybe not much so the players, because players always say they don't play for revenge and things like that, but I tend not to believe that.
Well, a fair point here made by Greencurve, saying that the Midtjylland game just came a bit too early. That's probably a fair point, that if the Midtjylland qualifier was this week or next, then I think there'd be a lot more encouragement to head into that. It's all hypothetical now, Alison, of course, but now that AZ Alkmaar are the next game, they're no slouches. They finished very close to PSV in the Dutch league last season, who just scudded Galatasaray in the Champions League qualifiers. So this is not going to be on a similar level to the Jablonec game. And if Celtic can come through this, then it's certainly showing progress.
Yeah, on the first point about the Midtjylland tie, I would agree it came too soon for Celtic, and I think you'd maybe see a different game now. But I think that also points to where the manager's frustrations came from in the earlier press conferences, when he was saying, I really need to get players in, we need to get our foot to the pedal and accelerate these deals quicker. I think that's what he was referencing, that if you're giving the players, we can be ready. I think they had maybe 3 or 4 weeks to get ready for that game, and I think it is a perennial headache for Celtic and any Scottish teams at this time. You have to be ready. The problem is you have to begin your preparations for these games in January. You have to be prepared to go in almost with pretty much the same squad that you had at the end of the season. You need to be ready. So that would be the first point. On the second point about Alkmaar, I think they are a considerable step up in quality. I think they beat PSV last season in the league. I think they've lost a few players since then. I think they've cashed in on a couple of players, but they are a formidable prospect for Celtic. They will raise the bar. I don't think anyone would be in any doubt about that. And it is a litmus test about how far Celtic have come in a short period of time, because this is a decent quality of opposition now. I think first leg is obviously at home next week, but I think it will be huge for Celtic to try and come through, do their homework, and try and come through that tie. We all know now that the away goals rule is defunct, so it really is about trying to do the groundwork and then take a result with you going over to Holland. But it'll be huge. I think it'll be a very, very testing night.
We'll have a quick chat about Joe Hart, and before we move on to the forward guys, maybe the defence in general. Peter McDonald saying that the roar when he made those 2 saves was quite significant. I think is that because that's something that the Celtic support have been starved of?
I think there might have been some irony in that, but the two saves were cheered to the echo as if that goal had been scored. I've not heard a roar like that for saves in a long, long time, and I think it's just a measure of Celtic's kind of relief at the fact that they now have a goalkeeper who can save the ball coming towards the goal. So I think there was a mixture of everything in it: humour, frustration, joy, relief, you name it. Alison will be able to tell you because she was there, but it certainly came through when you were watching it. And I just think as well they started to sing Joe Hart's name after it too, which is a great thing. I think Joe Hart's been around and seen a lot and done a lot, but I don't think often you'll get 60,000 people chanting his name, and that would have had a profound effect on him. He will have enjoyed that, and he said when he came that he wanted to perform and play and do his utmost for the supporters. So I think in that moment alone, he will have got what it means to play for Celtic, and I'm sure he'll want more of that and want them to continually sing his name, because if they do that, then he'll be keeping the ball out of the net.
Alison, Turnbull's first goal was a tidy finish, wasn't it, with the outside of the boot past the goalkeeper. Came from a through ball or a slide drill pass, I suppose, from Greg Taylor, who found himself in the middle of the park again with this new system that Postecoglou likes to play, where the right and left full-backs drift infield. Do you think that him and Ralston are really starting to adapt to this and show that maybe they do have long-term futures at Celtic, when, let's be honest, a lot of people have doubted them?
I still think there could be an opening for a more experienced fullbacks to come in. I still think that the club will look to source other fullbacks. But what I do think both have done is elevate their own reputations at the club, both in the eyes of the support and in a wider context. I think they look more settled, they look more comfortable, they look more composed. I think you have to credit the manager for some of that, but I think they look like different players. I think Anthony Ralston in particular took an incredible amount of criticism. I think it can be very hard to come out and play in an environment like Celtic when you know that there's that level of doubt about your ability and performances. I think he's very quietly went about showing that he does have something to offer. I think long term, what you would probably be looking at is that they have a role to play, but maybe not as first team regulars, but as deputies and reliable deputies. I think they've shown that they do have something to offer. On that front, I would also say what's jumped out too in recent weeks is the difference in a number of players. I think Ryan Christie's performances have been spoken about at length of how he looks like a player reborn. I think he looks different in this new system. He looks very comfortable. But I would also say Tom Rogic in recent games too has just reminded everyone that he's a player of considerable talent, that there is something there to offer. I think many people had envisaged he might not have a key role to play, but I think in recent performances, and you have to remember he's 28. I think Tom Rogic, he's not old by any means. I think he's one of those players that feels as though he's been around for a very long time. But I think on recent evidence, there's another player there, and it's almost like having a new player again. I think when you have someone that comes to the fore, because he just looks an entirely different prospect than what he was over the last 18 months or so.
Yeah, Tony, that's a great point Alison makes, because Tom Rogic does feel like he's been around forever. He's only 6 months older than Callum McGregor, but you would never think that Callum McGregor would be nearing, towards the end of his Celtic career, and he may go on to be a one-club man. Rogic's been here for a significant amount of time now. That must be about 7 seasons. So it's understandable why we might think at times that he's over the hill and starting to head into the horizon. But yeah, loads to offer.
Well, the thing is, I put it down to good management. If Ange Postecoglou can get a tune out of Tom Rogic, that's good man management. That's what being a manager is all about. You manage players. That's in your job description. And if there was anyone who was going to get a tune out of Tom Rogic, then it was probably Ange. He's worked with him before. He knows him. And just sometimes players need that. They need to feel loved. They need to feel important. They need to, they need the arm around them to say, look. And the first thing he's probably said is, you give me Tom Rogic, I'll give you a future at this club. Go out and show them again. Tom Rogic probably had to prove to the Celtic fans again that he's worthy of a place in the side. I've said before that you could compile a DVD of Tom Rogic's greatest goals for Celtic, but you could not probably compile a DVD of his greatest games. But he's had moments in games that have elevated Celtic and elevated probably his own performances. People say he's a fantastic footballer. He's a talented footballer, no doubt, but he's never been able to string it together consistently for Celtic. But somehow there are players who managers can get a tune out of. And I think Rogic is going to be one of these players that Ange can get a tune out of. And if he can, as Alison said, it will be like a new player for Celtic, because to all intents and purposes, he was out the door. So now you're seeing a rejuvenated Tom Rogic, and he has so much to offer because he's a talented player, but he can't be a luxury player. He has to contribute. And those high moments apart, he was not contributing consistently enough for Celtic fans, which led to people to believe that he was maybe on his way out. But he's now starting to contribute and be part of the team ethic. And I think that's all that the Celtic supporters have ever wanted from Tom Rogic.
He's in direct competition for a place in the team, Alison, with David Turnbull, who really turned up last night. I think that's a performance and a contribution that a few people have been waiting on this season. He did a lot last season, David Turnbull, and he made a good impression when he was introduced into the team towards the end of the Europa League group stage. But it's maybe taken a wee bit of time compared to some others to get up to speed with Postecoglou's system and the new style of play. But that was impressive last night. And what a second goal, as pure as undriven snow.
I thought he played particularly well last night. I'm sure he'll be delighted with the goals on a personal level to go in and score, because I think if you're a midfielder now at Celtic, you're going to be asked to contribute on that front. I thought last season David Turnbull came into a chaotic environment. He came into a team where everything was falling apart, where the pressure was absolute. And I think he would be one of the few who shone. I think he dipped a bit towards the end of the season, but he would be one of the few that you would say was one of the positives to emerge from a very difficult campaign. And then he was away, obviously, with Scotland and come back. I think he looks a real prospect, but I think the way that Ange Postecoglou wishes Celtic to play with this high pressing, high tempo, high energy game, I think you will need depth to the squad because it's a considerable length of a campaign. I don't think you can ask players to perform like that over the course of maybe 50, 55 and upwards games over the entirety of a season. So I think depth will be important, but I would suspect that David Turnbull will have a key part to play this season.
Tony, we were having a laugh before we came on air about the sleepless nights that Kyogo Furuhashi might give the assistant referees in Scotland and potentially European group stage this season, with just how much he lives life on the edge there on the last shoulder of the defenders, and probably, well, debatably could have had a goal last night with that one that was ruled out.
He's lightning. He really is. And, referees and assistant referees now they're going to have a split second to judge whether he's on or off. And to err is human. There are going to be calls that are going to be disputed now because it's just the way he plays. He's just always on the go. So whenever a Celtic midfielder picks up the ball, he's off and running. And you're going to have to be watching, the moment the ball's kicked, and he will catch people out, and that's just the way he is. And whilst it's great for Celtic, it's going to lead to, I think, a lot of frustrated supporters with calls, marginal calls. Alisson will tell you he never stops. If you watch him, or you just, if they did the player cam on him, he's always on the move, on the move, on the move. And he plays on, as you say, the last shoulder, plays in those pockets of space, and, impossible to mark. And I just think that, that'll be an interesting one moving forward. It could lead to, I was going to say, a lot of healthy debate, but probably unhealthy debate as well, moving forward.
Do you think that the Hearts game this weekend, Alisson, might see a wee bit of rotation then? Because the squad has been beefed up slightly, and Furuhashi is clearly the first pick through the middle at the moment, and with the Alkmaar game on Thursday probably taking precedence despite the cup game against Hearts being an important one. Maybe Abada might come back into the team. Edouard could play up front. Maybe James McCarthy will make his debut. Do you expect the starting lineup to be switched around slightly?
I think there will be a temptation to do that, but I'm not sure, just given the magnitude of the game, really. I don't think you would want to go out a competition at this stage and deflate the burgeoning levels of optimism that are building up. I think you would want to come out and make sure that you're progressing first and foremost. I think it's a pretty considerable month when you look at the games that are coming up. I think you obviously have the League Cup tie. There are important league games, and there's this Europa League qualifier still to go. This is a month that can shape what comes next in the season. It can set the tone. So in that respect, I think that while there might be a temptation to tweak it, I don't think that you'll see widespread changes. I think Abada coming in as a consideration. I think he offers quite a bit. I still think Furuhashi, if he's fit, he took a kick last night. He was down and he went off a few minutes later. If he's fit, I think he starts through the middle. I think if there's any question mark about him carrying a knock, then you would wrap him in cotton wool ahead of Thursday night. But I think if he's fit, he'll probably start. But I think just the level of importance of wanting to sustain what you're building and just continue the trajectory of where things are going, I think would suggest that you'll try and stick with what's working.
Yeah, I think there'll be a pedal to the metal approach with Celtic in the next few games, just to see exactly where they're at. I agree with that. I wouldn't tinker too much if I'm Ange. I don't think there's any need to. And I think he'll want to get a cracking result against Hearts in the Cup. He'll want to beat Rangers, and he'll want to win both the Europa League ties. So I think he'll certainly go all out to win all of those games. Whether that's possible or not, then who knows? But there's certainly some confidence and momentum building. So I don't think you'd want to tinker too much to, which might jeopardise that.
Yeah, it's certainly the possibility of a bubble bursting if Hearts win against Celtic on Sunday and then Alkmaar turn the club over at Parkhead in the first leg of the playoffs. So, yeah, massive week ahead. It's just the start of the season, but things can shape up so quickly for Celtic. And as we've seen on the other side of the city, how quickly things can change. But Celtic seem to be going in the other direction now. And I suppose a win against Hearts and then a positive showing and result at home to Alkmaar will just keep that going. So we'll be right on top of things here at the Celtic Way. And as you can see at the bottom of your screen, you can subscribe for only £1 a month for the rest of the year. And we'll keep on producing our features and our podcasts and our daily briefings and all the rest of it, tactical analysis. So if you're enjoying what we're doing and enjoying the daily briefings, just feel free to spread the word and we'll crack on. So Tony, Alison, cheers.
Thank you.